What if I told you that pretty much everything you've learned about sales is, well, wrong? You know, the part about being helpful, persuasive, and always serving the customer. What if that uncomfortable feeling you get when you're selling isn't because selling is a dirty game, but because you're playing it from a position of weakness? Okay, let's really dig into this idea. Right off the bat, the philosophy we're breaking down today draws a really sharp line in the sand. You've got the weak on one side, who believes sales is all about manipulation. And look, that's a comforting thought, right? It kind of excuses failure. But on the other side, you have the powerful, who understand that sales is fundamentally about control. Now, not control over the person, but control over the context, the frame through which the entire conversation is viewed. And this just nails why so many of us hate selling. That awkward, cringy feeling, it's not baked into the transaction itself. It's the feeling of being in a lower status position. You're seeking approval, you're asking for permission, you're hoping they'll pick you. You've basically already cast yourself as the servant, and let's be honest, nobody respects a ruler who asks for permission to lead. So here's how we're going to walk through this mindset shift. First, we're going to tear down the central lie of sales. Then we'll look at why true power begins from within. After that, we'll get into the tactics of controlling the conversation. And finally, we'll cover the mindset of command you need to pull it all off. All right, let's jump into part one and tackle the biggest myth out there, the central lie of sales. And just look at the subtitle, Why Persuasion is a Symptom of Weakness. Kind of flips things on its head, doesn't it? So this completely redefines persuasion. We usually think of it as a power move, a key skill. But this philosophy says no, that's what you fall back on when you have no real authority. See, true selling isn't about convincing someone. It's about positioning yourself so clearly, so perfectly, that you become the only logical, inevitable choice. And that positioning, it has almost nothing to do with logic or a list of features. People use logic to justify their decisions, sure, but they make decisions based on emotion. They're not buying your product, they're buying status, dignity, relief from shame. They're buying an escape from self-disgust, or maybe some leverage over their future. The seller who leads with features is just a clerk. The one who speaks to these deep core drivers, that's the ruler. Which brings us to our second point, and it's a big one. Where all this power actually comes from. It's not about scripts or clever tactics, it starts inside you. It's all about selling yourself before you ever try to sell anything else. This is the foundation for everything. So here's the absolute killer mistake in sales. It isn't a bad script or a weak closing line, it's internal disbelief. If you deep down doubt your own offer, the buyer will feel that crack in your foundation instantly. I love this Machiavellian analogy. A ruler who questions his own right to rule is just inviting a conspiracy. A seller who questions their product is inviting resistance. It's that simple. And this is the absolute core of it. People are not buying your service or your widget. They are buying your calm, unshakable certainty that their life is going to be better with you in it. That conviction, that certainty, you just can't fake it. Your nervous system will rat you out every single time. So where do you get that kind of certainty? It's not from chanting positive affirmations in the mirror. It's forged in discipline. It comes from keeping the promises you make to yourself, waking up when you said you would, doing the prep work when no one's watching. These little acts of personal integrity build an internal authority that just radiates out of you. That's real credibility.
Okay, so you've built that internal foundation. Now we can get tactical. Let's move on to section 3, controlling the conversation. The trick here isn't to talk more. It's to completely shift the dynamic from just explaining features to exposing consequences.
This chart just lays it out perfectly. On one side, you have the clerk. They explain features, they sell this vague idea of hope, and they're just desperate for the buyer's approval. On the other side, you have the strategist. They expose the consequences of doing nothing, they sell inevitability, and they are actively selecting and disqualifying clients. They're a gatekeeper, not a beggar at the door. So how do you actually do this? You use diagnostic questions to control the frame. Just look at these 3. How long has this been a problem? What has it cost you so far? And then the knockout punch. What happens if nothing changes in a year? Notice something? Not a single one of these questions is about you or your amazing solution. They're all designed to make the buyer confront the real cost of staying right where they are. And that's because your job isn't to be a decorator, putting pretty bells and whistles on the solution. Your real role is to be a diagnostician, to clarify the trap that the buyer is already stuck in. People will move way faster to get away from pain than they will to move toward pleasure. You create urgency by making them feel the weight of their current reality, not by dangling some far-off promise. All right, so you've got the internal belief, you have the tactical questions, but what happens when the buyer pushes back? That brings us to our last section, the mindset of command. This is all about holding your ground through resistance, rejection, and yes, even silence. First, we have to completely reframe the word no. For the weak seller, no feels personal. It feels like rejection, like failure. But from a position of power, no is just data. It's a signal of incomplete awareness. It just means they don't fully get the value yet, or the consequences of staying put haven't hit them hard enough. It means your frame is unfinished. It's a signal to keep diagnosing, not to retreat. Now let's talk about the tool that terrifies most people, silence. In any negotiation, the person who can't handle the silence loses. The weak seller will rush in to fill that void, more talking, more explaining, maybe even offering a discount. And every word they say just bleeds their authority away. The powerful seller knows that silence isn't empty space, it's pressure. It broadcasts confidence and forces the other person to show their hand. This gets to a huge difference in preparation, which is framed here as the poor versus the rich. Now, this isn't about money, it's about mindset. The poor in mindset hope for an opportunity. They wait until they feel ready. The rich in mindset practice to create their own opportunities. They train to become inevitable. One is passive, waiting for a lucky break. The other is actively engineering their own success. I love this take on the fear of screwing up. Look, you're gonna make mistakes. You'll forget a name, your demo will glitch. It happens. But mistakes don't kill deals. Panic does. A mistake just shows you're human, and that can actually build a connection. But panicking, fumbling, losing your cool, that screams weakness. And that's what vaporizes a buyer's confidence in you. How you recover is the real sign of authority. So after going through all of this, all these mindsets and tactics, what's the one big thing to take away? Let's wrap it all up in our conclusion. It's simply this: position over tactics. And the subtitle really says it all: why structure is everything. So what does this seller who stands above actually look like? Well, they're calmer, they're way more selective. Crucially, they are totally willing to walk away from a bad fit. And because of that, they just radiate legitimacy instead of begging you to trust them. They assume full responsibility for the outcome. And the key to all of it, they control the frame, because their survival doesn't depend on closing any one single deal. And this is the final kind of brutal truth of this whole philosophy. The market doesn't care how hard you work or how busy you are. It doesn't reward effort for effort's sake. It rewards authority. It rewards certainty. It rewards that undeniable power that comes from a seller who has built their position from the inside out. So we'll leave you with this last question to really think about. In your work, in your negotiations, maybe even just in your life, are you selling like a servant? Always seeking approval, just hoping to be chosen? Or are you commanding the context, acting as the gatekeeper to a better future? The choice of which position you take, that's entirely up to you.